Good evening to all our participants present for the webinar. I, Faraz Wadhwania, on behalf of Devex, welcome you all to the event on Kickstart Your Enterprising Journey. Devex has organized numerous webinars and events to stay connected with the community. It's a pleasure moderating the all-women panel this time. Before moving on, I request all the participants to keep their audio on mute and video switched off for a better experience. The chat section is disabled right now, and we will enable it after 10 minutes, wherein you can share your questions, and I will try my level best to put forth those questions to our panelists. To take the session further, let me start with you as to why we selected the topic for today's webinar. I request everyone from the panel as well to mute their microphones for a bit. Once the chance comes, they can unmute it themselves. Thank you. To take the session further, let me share with you as to why we selected the topic for today's webinar. In the last couple of days, interacting with a few professionals and startups, everyone was wondering as to when will the lockdown resume, what will be its future trend, and how can someone utilize this period of lockdown and take a big leap. That was always a dream. A dream for a professional to start his entrepreneurial journey, for a lady who was on maternity leave and looking forward to bounce back, students wanting to embrace entrepreneurship and innovation, and someone who wanted to switch from their existing job to a newer one. Several such questions is what led to the idea of organizing this webinar, finding it to be the need of the time. With this webinar, we will try to get a knack of how to begin doing what we always wanted to do. Moving ahead, I would now like to introduce you all to our esteemed panel of the day. First of all, we have Ms. Nishita Mantri. Nishita is a business coach for women solopreneurs. She consults women on how to launch their business and get to their first customer. She helps them design their business plans and evaluate their revenue model as to how they can start their business and make it profitable. We next have Ms. Aditi Balbir. Aditi is the founder and CEO of V Resorts, an organization that provides holiday experiences to showcase the real India. She has set up a platform by spearheading 2 successive rounds of $9 million of funding raised from Bedrock Ventures, Seed Fund, and RB Investments. The third panelist on the board today is Ms. Preksha Kaparwan. Preksha is the co-founder and CMO of Alpha AI, managing tasks like generating leads, product development, ecosystem building, and more into the aid for growing the company. She was previously the CMO of Realbox Data Analytics Private Limited. Before we move ahead, I would request all our speakers to share their journey in a nutshell, focusing on their business, their team, growth, the milestones achieved, and more importantly, how they began. First of all, I would like to start it from you, Nishita. Please go ahead.
Hi guys, just to quickly introduce myself, I am Nishita. I'm a business coach for women entrepreneurs. So I just have this quick presentation. Just 5 slides, so it'll be easy for me to talk about me. So this is me. I'm a business coach for women entrepreneurs. My aim, the plan I'm working on is coming up with a business school for women. I'm also a co-founder for Peach Collar, which is a community of HNI women currently in Mumbai, and we plan to have chapters across India. I began as a student of mass media and communication. Then I went on to complete my master's in advertising and marketing. When I started my ad agency in 2009, It's called Bamboo Shoot Communication. I also started teaching as a professor with a lot of colleges affiliated with the University of Mumbai. So, Belinkas, Bhavans, Lala Lajpat Rai, Dalmia, Saraf, lot of these colleges I was teaching them branding, marketing, and advertising. In 2013, I authored a book for the University of Mumbai. It's a prescribed book on brand management for the TI BMM students. It's been 7 years. The book is in the market every year now with the next edition. Recently, I also wrote a book on Start Your Business Workbook. The edition 1 was in 2015. The edition 2 was right now. I launched it in March 2020. In the last 10 years, I have mentored more than 10,000 women and I've launched about 300 plus women-led startups. Just a quick thing, my core is doing one-on-one consultations. It's like a mini MBA for startups. It's a 30-hour one-on-one coaching in which I have 10 sessions with, they're called Start and Scale Your Business. So there are these 10 sessions that I cover in these one-on-one coaching and consultation. And just a little bit about the book. So working with a lot of Fortune 500 brands, I wanted to bring these brands for startups. So I wanted to teach people that, how can a startup, when these big brands actually launch their skills, they actually work on how they work on getting an idea from scratch. How do they name a brand? How they position their branding? How do they create a market segmentation? How do they create offers for their products? So all of that is covered in the book. It's a 130-page workbook. There are 25 business concepts and modules covered. There are 61 exercises for you to identify and define your business strategies. So that's a little bit about my book. And I also run a yearly membership for women solopreneurs. It's every Saturday we meet 12 to 1. Every month, the first week we do goal setting. Week 2 we do business brainstorming. Classroom. So if they have an issue, they have an idea, they would like to discuss it. Week 3 we have a networking circle where you bring in a friend and get more people to know what you do. And week 4 is a learning capsule where I give a 1 hour of coaching. So these are a couple of brands that I have, I could figure out, I could collect and just show you all what are the brands I've worked with. So these are just a minuscule of these brands. So I think for us, that's about it. A quick introduction about me.
Great. Nishita, we would like to know, the team, if you have a team and how did you begin your journey in first place?
Yes, so I have a team of 5 people. I began a journey with just one laptop and one desktop 10 years back in 2009. So I had me and I had a designer and just 2 of us got started with my company. So the whole myth that you need investment and funding to begin, I totally disagree to that because I went on with my business without any funding, just one laptop and one desktop. And today I have a team of 5 people and we do a lot of international projects on the agency part because we just want to do little work there and focus more on working with women solopreneurs. So that's the team size right now.
Great, thank you so much for that insight, Nishita. One important takeaway from her journey is you can start solo and you can go big after it, and you get not to have a larger funding base at your disposal to grow your business. Thanks, Nishita. Aditi, I would like to know from you your story as to how you began, how you grew your business, your team, and the important milestones that you've hit till date.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me here today. Well, I began B Resorts in 2014, and I'll just give you a little bit of a background before that. Before that, I was actually working for a venture capital fund. I come from a background of legal as well as finance. I'm class of 2009 from ISB, and before that, I was in Symbiosis Law. I always had the intention of being a professional, never thought about becoming an entrepreneur. And B Resorts is actually a company which began in 2011 when we were in the venture capital fund, and it was actually begun by these two gentlemen who, had some idea about what to do in terms of the boutique resort space, but they came to us for a lot of guidance, and we ended up giving them the seed capital to start. But within a year, they decided that they didn't want to do that anymore, and so they left. And at that time, this is 2013, that we were trying to figure out that should we just shut the company down or what should we do with it. And because I love traveling, so the venture capital fund manager had thought that, it would be great if I take a lead on the company. I was already the nominee director on that company board, so I had seen it through, the initial startup and, how it stood on its feet. But somewhere along the way, these guys had, lost the business model and what we really wanted to do. So in 2013, I decided that I would become an entrepreneur. I put in some money into the venture and started running B Resorts. At that time, the name was also different. It was called Blissins. Okay, so we changed the name and everything. So it was almost like starting a new company from scratch. We had to think through what went wrong, what did they do wrong, what we will do differently. And in fact, as it turns out, that 2014 was a year when all the aggregators started, right? So Oyo Rooms, Fab Hotels, Tribo, all these guys exist today. And that's how we also began at that time, thinking that we will be aggregators, we will build a platform where people can put in, their inventory of small boutique properties. And by small, I mean anything under 30 rooms, right? And we thought that we'll begin like that. But very quickly we found out that, there is a very big difference in terms of what people want when they are on a holiday vis-a-vis what they want when they are on business travel, right? So when you're on a holiday, you want to be pampered, you're very particular about the food, you're very particular about your room, and you really want to do a whole lot of activities. You don't just want to go and sit in a room and just do nothing, right? So very quickly on, we discovered that we needed to be more than an aggregator. We actually had to give professional management to these small floundering properties, which did not have, the marketing wherewithal. They did not have the network to be able to get customers in, to take reviews, the entire vertical, as we see, right from when a person finds you on the internet to when they leave you and then they give their feedback and everything. So that entire assembly line is what we, started managing. And that's how B Resorts really came into being. 2014, we started from 5 properties, and that year we only focused on, what sort of a property should it be? What are we going to add? What is the capital expenditure that we're going to put into the property? What is going to be the owner's responsibility? How are we going to brand the properties and so on? So it was a learning year for us, right? And then 2015 onwards, we started scaling up. We started scaling up slowly. And in fact, Parag, just to let you know, we've actually done 4 rounds of fundraise. We started scaling from 2014. We had about 25 properties, and today we're ready to almost touch 200 properties, before the whole COVID thing happened. And we have a team of about 2,000 people on the ground who manage these properties. We have about 120 people at the corporate level. We are almost now nearing break even, something which, I know post-COVID is going to be the talk of every business. That is not how to burn money, but how to be able to generate money from whatever you have put in. And together in these 6 years, we have been able to raise a total of $17 million, of which about $10 million has gone into the business. So luckily we did have some money in the bank as well before COVID happened. And also, as it would have it, we just signed the paperwork and we were able to actually merge with a larger player who felt that, we have a strong presence in the leisure domain, and, they had a good presence in the business domain. And so we were very complementary. So we decided to merge with them. They actually bought us over, and hopefully that transaction will now go through. So that's about my own journey.
Thanks, Aditi. You seem to be more like an accidental entrepreneur. Just want to understand from you as to how could you align with the vision of the initial founders of the company, because everyone starts their journey with some sort of vision at the beginning. So how were you able to manage that vision and get an alignment with it?
Right. So, like I said, that the initial vision was to build an aggregator platform, right? And luckily for me, we failed very quickly. We figured that, look, that's not working, because what happened was that, there were some people going to some properties, they loved it because the owner was running it really nicely. And then they would go to another property that would be branded B Resorts, and they would say that this is terribly run, right? Because it would be completely different in look and feel and all that. So we were not able to create a consistent experience for the customer, and there was absolutely no standardization of any sort, right? Because we were only a platform. So we realized, through the reviews and everything, that this is not the model that is going to work in India. Also, Indians are very particular about service. We don't want to live. We don't want to live in other people's homes. We're very particular about hygiene and so many things, right? Especially when we are on holiday. So luckily for me, I had to rebuild the entire business plan. So for me, my entrepreneurial journey was actually like starting right from scratch. So I didn't really have to align myself with anybody.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Aditi. We'll now switch to Preksha, someone who's turned from a professional to an entrepreneur and her journey of self-learning and discovering the entrepreneurial journey. Preksha, please go ahead.
Sure. So hi everyone, and thank you Faraz for putting the session together. If you have paid attention to the first part of the introduction, I run an AI company, and I have started my career as a chef. So that is not a very common thing where people switch from a totally different kind of lifestyle profession to something which is technology based. It has been a long journey of 8 years, actually. I was a chef in one of the 5-star properties, and I did that for 3 years. It was fun. It was crazy. I really liked it. But at some point, which I think most of the people at some point feel that there's a family pressure to do something which they also feel comfortable with, because being a chef at that point was not hip. It was just like doing something that is challenging the society norms. So somehow I ended up quitting that job, and then I started to teach, which I did for another year. Though it was a lot of fun, it was a lot of giving back to the community, but at personal level, I thought my growth was stunted. I could not learn more things, and I just felt this itching inside that I want to do something else. I want to probably have a greater impact. And that's what led to me quitting that job as well. So from that, I couldn't have gone back to being a chef. So I thought, what should I do? So I joined a technology company which was dealing into hospitality software. They were creating digital menus, which also was not the norm today. Everywhere you go, you'll be able to easily find digital menus on iPads, and you can go through various dishes and place your orders, suggest how you want it to be made. So that's what we were doing. So I picked a sales job, and I tried to go talk to a lot of restaurants, go visit door to door and figure out that this is something that we should be using, because this is the future. But somehow that was, I ended up making a lot of friends in hospitality industry, because I used to meet them every day, but none of them bought it. And that probably was because they realized that I do not know technology, the technology that I'm trying to sell to them. I know what it can do for them, but the basics and how it has to be created, modulated, and configured for them was just out of my comfort zone. So that company was not doing very well, and we ended up losing our last developer in the company. So that at that point, I had actually sold my first to my first customer. So I did not know how to deliver it to them now because we did not have a developer. So my boss at the time, who was an ex Microsoft, he was building it, and he wanted help, and he said, like, if you want to sell it to this person and the modification that you offered, go ahead and build that. So I decided that I'll go and I'll figure out few courses for myself and learn technology. And I learned to code in like next 3 months, and I just while building the product itself. And that's how my introduction to technology actually happened. Then we together started our another company, our next company, because that clearly wasn't working out for us. And it was into data analytics, which is the topic of intrigue for everyone today, because data is the oil, especially when oil is going down, is plummeting down, right? So it was a data analytics company, and we decided that everyone who loves data do not have access to data today. And that probably is because they do not have they do not know how to create dashboards, how to analyze that data, and how to get insights out of that data. So we created that company, and it was 2015. It was called Realbox Media. And while we were doing that, we worked with a couple of Fortune 500 companies. The response was good, but the way we saw it, at some point we realized that it cannot grow to become $1 billion company. It will always be a services company, which we ended up becoming with instead of being a product company, which we really wanted to be. So in I think 2 years back, in 2017, April, I posted a video on LinkedIn, which was about how you can use voice assistant to ask questions related to your business and generate insights. And that went viral, which was moment of realization for us, an aha moment when we thought that, oh, people do not want to look at dashboards. They want to understand insights. And that's what we should be focusing on. Simple people who like to know more about from their data, more about their business, but do not want to operate a lot of technological instruments. So that's where we created Alpha.ai. Faraz, can I show a quick demo if that's possible? Can I share my screen?
Definitely you can. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
Yes. If you can see my screen right now, this is what the product looks like. On the left side, if you see there's a dashboard, it is a Tableau dashboard, which most of the companies in the world use. Like there are 70% companies who use a technology like Tableau for their BI tools. Now, for a novice person, for someone who does not deal in technology that often, which are business users, they would want to know what is my sales by category, sort of very, focused questions. They don't want to look at everything which is everywhere. So this is what the natural language question technology does. It will allow you to ask questions like these very simply just by talking. I'm going to show you one. If I can move this. So allow me now. What is my phone sales for state of Texas for last 12 months monthly? So do you see that? This shows me the sales for the state of Texas by month just by me asking it. So this is what we ended up creating. We created a way for people to actually ask questions, how they are thinking about their business. So this happened in 2017. We have been building since then. And we have spoken to almost 200 Fortune 500 companies, and the CXOs and CEOs they feel that this is the pain point that they have been trying to solve for some time, especially CIOs, because for them, the mandate is to make their companies data driven, right? Give everyone access to data without them feeling technologically restricted. So that's what we ended up creating, and the response is quite good at this point.
Great. Presha, some learnings from your experience that you shared. One is like you can keep on trying up new stuff until you settle for something that's really working for you. Second, I would also like to know from you as to what was the emotional journey that you faced while switching from Realbox to setting up Alpha AI.
Yeah, so I was So when Realbox, I felt that there were, so when you work with someone, when you work with a team, you are forced to take certain decisions which have to be okayed by everyone, which has to fit in certain rules of what you have set up for that company. While we were creating Alpha AI, we realized that it has to be more people driven than driven by the team which is inside. And I think the focus of Realbox got diluted while we were trying to make some money. We raised some funds over there, just like your little sum, $500,000 sort of, because we wanted to understand where we can take this and how we can build on top of it. So we ended up losing our focus over a few years and became a very slow growing company. When Alpha AI happened, there was an instant emotional excitement, which we could see from the people outside who came to support us while we were entering in that mode where we were creating something which was for people, and we have learned about what to create from them itself instead of being in our own cocoon. Because I think a lot of companies, a lot of startups which die mostly create products for themselves, for their happiness, for something that they wanted to create, and do not go and market at a very initial stage and try it asking the customer if that's something that helps them, which was a major drawback in the previous company. And then when we started Alpha AI, from the very initial point, we shared with everyone. If you go on my LinkedIn timeline now, you will see that I keep posting very regularly about what we are doing, what we are creating. If something that we made is useful to you, or if someone wants to contribute to what we have been doing. And it has been a very, it has been a journey where we are building with people and not alone.
Super, Preksha. Thank you so much for all your insights as to what was going in your mind when you tried switching up. And this was quite insightful from each and every panelist that we have on board. We have an intermixture of panelists sharing their different journeys, but what's important is they trusted themselves and took a step in the direction they wanted to go. Now, further, what I would like to do is I'd like to open the arena for our speakers to answer a few questions that we received from our attendees while they registered for the event. Nishita, first of all, I would like to know from you, during this period of lockdown, a lot of people have either lost their jobs or got some sort of significant pay cuts and are looking to switch their job as a strategy to bounce back. So how do you suggest these people should go about, bouncing back and having something concrete in for themselves?
So that's a really great question for us, because I've also been speaking to a lot of people and they're so worried because, right now some of them are at a 30% cut, some of them are actually thrown out of their companies, just out of with no notice. And, they're really not sure of what is next in store for them. So just to start off on a warmer note, I would actually like to tell these people that it's not the end of the world right now. It's just like an emergency situation. So do not give up. And the other thing is that if you believe in yourself, if you believe in your skill set, if you believe in your capabilities, then definitely, it's just a matter of some time. You're going to get back in action. For now, the best that they can do is, if you see, it's really strange, but it's like this lockdown has actually changed the complete life of a human. We didn't know that, it was so important for us to have somebody handy who could, repair our fridge. Because in the lockdown, I met people who had some issues. Their fridge was not working well and they were really looking for help. There were people who wanted to get their ACs repaired. It's funny, but I did a survey with women that I'm working with, and everybody said that they're really wanting to get salon and spa services up and running the minute the lockdown is done. So my suggestion is, guys, look at essential industries and essential services, essential businesses, which will go out and boom immediately that the lockdown is coming up. and you can really be creative in this. You can really look at you know use your own common sense and see what is it that people would look for as the first thing the immediately the lockdown is shut, and tap those kind of industries. Tell connect with them by yourself and tell them what is it that you can do for them additionally, so that when the lockdown is out, I mean it's over, they'll be able to really contribute to that. And I'm not just saying this just out of some gyan here, but I know that this is what I have been doing with a lot of brands that I am working with. We are getting more people, hiring more people at this time, because we are getting really good talent, and also getting talent work at a pretty decent cost as well. So that's how I would like to recommend. Look for essential industries.
Nishita, could you please throw some light on what sort of profiles are you hiring, and amongst the other women entrepreneurs and the group that you've been connected to, what sort of profiles have been getting hired in first place? That is one. And secondly, how do you see the changing trends of career post the lockdown has been lifted?
So the kind of profiles that we've been hiring is, guys, right now, even in the lockdown, I am personally hiring so many content writers, because this is the time I can really put a lot of content in my work, write blogs, do a lot of things. The other kind of people that people are hiring right now is, I'll tell you, some of my clients are actually hiring and looking for marketing consultants who can really streamline their strategies. Some clients are actually also looking at, doing a 30%, 40% cut in their business. So they're looking at automating quite a lot of services that they have. So, getting, so if there is somebody who's developing something in IT, which is trying to automate some kind of a business service, people are really looking at doing that, because in the long run, that will cut costs for them. People are hiring, doing a lot of personal learning. So they're hiring life coaches, business coaches, success coaches. A lot of coaches are being hired right now. Dietitians have been hired right now. So a lot of these kind of people are being hired, and a lot of business is still happening right now.
Thank you so much, Nishita. For all our attendees, Nishita just shared with us as to what kind of profiles are being hired at this point of time, and how you can work towards that direction, if not presently out there, to get yourself going and land yourself an amazing opportunity. Next, I would like to ask Aditi. Aditi, how do you suggest one can go about switching from a job to entrepreneurship? And what things do you think are critical and should be taken care of while making the switch?
Sure. So see, entrepreneurship and professional people, I mean, it's a very different ballgame altogether, right? And a profession, in a profession, the best thing about it is, the monthly paycheck. And I'm being very candid here. It's very, very comforting. It's basically, for people who are used to it, it is usually quite tough to get into an entrepreneurship role. Entrepreneurship, on the other hand, is all about risk taking. You need to know that 1% of the startups do well. 0.1% become the unicorns, right? So everybody wants to get into being a startup just to be that big unicorn, and I don't think that's the best mindset. So just like Nishita said, I think there are a lot of businesses in India. Women-led, men-led, it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is that there are businesses that need to focus on profitability, and then there are businesses that are built only for growth. And the main distinction between these two things is that in terms of profitability, you can reach profitability very quickly. So in my case also, if I can just give you an example, if I just did 5 resorts, I would have been terribly profitable. I would have had a team of maybe 5 people on ground, and we would have made a bunch of money, right? We wouldn't have needed the funds. what funds and what venture capital or whatever sort of funds actually does is it compresses the timeline. So whatever you would have done in 10 years, you're actually supposed to do it in 3 years. Now, let me tell you how difficult that is, because in 10 years, you've actually garnered that, there is a concept that says that if you do 10,000 hours on any one particular subject, you become the expert, right? So that 10 years actually kind of translates to those 10,000 hours, and you become an expert in your field. So the mistakes that you made, also you made them at your leisure. You've come out of them, and you have a whole host of learning which you do not have when you have to compress your business and you need to reach that $1 billion or whatever mark that you have set for yourself in those 3 years, right? So entrepreneurship, the mindset for an entrepreneur, it's very important that they understand this, that one, they will be taking a huge risk, okay? Something which I'm not very sure of at this particular point of time, but like Nishita said, I can tell you a lot of work is happening even in my industry, which visually it looks as if travel tourism is completely out and no work is happening. But let me tell you, a lot of work is happening. We didn't have to give pay cuts or do any sort of firing in our case, because we just completely changed our focus and we started focusing on all the technologies that we haven't built. So it completely depends upon what you do with your people and what you do with your resources. But the fact is that being an entrepreneur, you need to know that it's going to be very risky. There's a very, very high probability that you will fail. And like in other people's case, you can keep doing a whole lot of businesses also to figure that out. I frankly really think that an entrepreneur, a person who is an entrepreneur and a person who is a professional, their mindsets are very different. And I was kind of pushed into it, so I had no option but to change my mindset. But usually people are driven to either one or the other. Okay, someone who is very comfortable with their paycheck may not really be entrepreneurially driven. Okay, so just to give you my own example, look, this was a company which was funded when I went into it, and it had the money to pay the salaries and everything, right? Now, I have seen periods where our salaries did not come on time, where we were short of funds hadn't hit our account, all those issues have happened. But the fact of the matter is we still know that we get a paycheck at the end of the month, right? An entrepreneur is really, someone who's going to say that, okay, I have 50 lakhs in my account. I'm going to put all 50 lakhs into this business and I'm going to figure it out whether it's going to, do well or it's not going to do well. It's very, very high risk, okay? And to mitigate that risk, like I said, there are two types of businesses. So you can figure out if you are risk taking. You could do businesses which are very high growth, and so therefore you're going after the money, you're going after the funds. Just because you had Series A funding doesn't mean you will be able to get Series B and so on and so forth. So at every level of a growing company, you are bound to fail. Whereas you can also go in for companies and businesses where you don't really need external funds and which can be more profitability driven, where you need a small team and where you can start generating cash much faster. So it completely depends on
Aditi, you reiterated the point that Nishita was trying to put forward as to you don't need a bigger team or some sort of heavy funding when you wish to grow your business. So that's a key takeaway for all the attendees that we have out here. The next question I would like to put forward to Pariksha is, Pariksha, since you have learned how to code, you've upgraded yourself, you have upskilled yourself into doing what you are currently doing right now. From a CMO, from someone into hospitality industry to someone who is the co-founder of the company and who knows coding. So share as to how our attendees can go about exactly upgrading themselves, upskilling themselves, and what are the different platforms that you would like to suggest that are good enough for them to go ahead with this idea.
Sure, absolutely. So I think at some point you will always feel that this is not what I want to do. Maybe I want to, for an example, we can take artificial intelligence because that's what I learned in past couple of years actually. So you pick a point that where you realize that this is not what I want to do. I want to do something else, and artificial intelligence is one for me. That could be cooking for you. That can be another kind of professional career for you. That can be anything, right? So you need to break it down into understanding that what is it that you can solve right now. For machine learning, first step was for me to learn was data analytics. because for AI, first step for me to learn was data analytics, because data is what decides how machine is going to learn and how AI is going to decide eventually, right? So you need to break it down. First of all, understand if it's a hobby or if you want it to be a career. Because if you want it to be a career, you will leave what you're doing presently, and that source of income will go, as we also mentioned, and you'll start learning something new. And it is going to be a vast thing. Okay. Now, either you want to build your own thing, learning that particular talent. Either you want to be a startup, you want to open a startup, or you want to switch your career. Okay. So if you're switching your career, I suggest that you pick a role that you want to fit in. Let's say that you like a role in Amazon where you want to be, and it's a different role than what you're currently doing. So you study according to the resume, that the job requirements that they put out. If you want to be a data scientist, what they are expecting a data scientist to do in their companies, what you will start learning. There are multiple courses which are available online. In fact, Coursera has few free courses by Andrew Ng, which are amazing. So, sorry, it's from AI perspective, it's from machine learning perspective I'm talking. But there are multiple other courses which are on Coursera right now, which are free. And if you can make a student account, you can get many more courses for free as of now. And you can start learning, doing those half an hour, 1 hour classes every day. That is one way to go about it. While you're doing that, it's very important to start building a project. So let's say you're planning to apply for a data scientist job. So you have to start building a project which you can showcase while you're going for your interview, which you can send to people like me, people who are hiring for that kind of role, and validate it. Like, this is what I have built. Can you please have a look at and check and tell me what I can improve? Or this is the use case I'm trying to solve. Can you help me better this use case, make it more worthy? So you start with a project once you have picked what kind of talent you want to inculcate, and then you start to learn in the sequence of the job description that particular company has given out. So there are multiple videos on YouTube which are also available, and I think they are amazing, because that's how I learned. I went to Codecademy, I went to YouTube videos, and I started to learn from what I wanted to create. So you decide which job role you want, and if you're a startup, you decide what you want to create, and you start from the very basic block. Okay, this is what I want to do, and I'll need to learn this for that. Next step, I'll need to learn this, and in the next step, this is what I should be doing. Post that, I'll need to create a project and send it to all the people who are regarded as the experts in these fields. Then I need to ask for the feedback and need to ask for them to give me a better project, or maybe modify the project that I have suggested, because they have been in the community out there. They know how things are and how things are changing. So now I think that this is like one way to go about it. But then again, a lot of people feel that if you want to learn something technology focused and you are not from technology background, they will never go this side. They will just disregard it. But trust me, if you do not go all the way into technology, you don't really even have to, because there are so many resources out there. Even if you know a little bit of it, something basic that you understand about technology will be good enough for you to find the tools out there which will help you build something that you want to build today. And then, of course, you can go find people who can give you a personal coaching and teach you more. But it always helps if those are the people passionate about the project that they are doing as well.
Pariksha, did LinkedIn in any way can contribute towards a better learning?
LinkedIn Learning is a very good platform. Like, if you have seen LinkedIn Learning programs and all, they are very good. But apart from that, I have been able to find a lot of people to talk to and collaborate with within LinkedIn. So I think it's been almost 2 years since LinkedIn has been picking up. Before that, we only used to use LinkedIn for professional connection. Like, if you want to apply for a job and find who is hiring at the moment is what we used to use. But in past 2 years, LinkedIn has really come up as a more social platform, from the business point of view. So there are people who are willing to give you these kind of these kind of the coaching free of cost, and they are very good influencers who talk about things which they talk about different topics. So you need to find who talks about your kind of topic, do a hashtag search and start following those people, and eventually they also share a lot of resources. You will end up finding something that makes sense to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Preksha, for all your insight. My next question is for Nishita. Nishita, could you please help me understand that we have a few attendees who wish to get back to the working ways after setting up their families? What could be the way ahead for some people out here who are now off their maternity period? How can they bounce back?
I'll just share with you, this was something about my own best friend, and she was pregnant. It was the first baby, so she actually took like a 2-year break because she was really excited to, have the baby. It was the first baby and she wanted to spend time and all. But by the time she was finishing those 2 years and she was very clear that, okay, now she wants to get back to her work, I remember her calling me and telling me that I just feel everything has changed. The industry has changed. I don't know where to begin. I don't know, if I will fit into the same job role I've been in. I don't know what's going to go on. So at that point, there were two recommendations and suggestions that I had given her, which I would like to share with you. And I think that really worked for her as well. The first thing that I would like to share is that the first thing that you need to do is step out of your house and go out and network and meet people. And that's the simplest thing that you can do. There are so many networking events, meets that keeps going on. The minute you want to start building the momentum of getting back to work, that's the first step of going out networking and meeting people, because it really opens up your eyes, your brains. It opens up, it gets you back to speaking, back to connecting. And then you start feeling a little better because you feel that, oh, I'm not that bad. I still know what's going on. And so that's the first thing, go out and network. The second thing that I would like to say is what I recommended her as well, that in any kind of industry or field that she is, you can probably also start with taking up a small course. Because when you take up a course in your current field, you just, redoing a whole thing and just kind of quickly, getting the hang of what you've been doing. So she took a 3 months course, an online course. She kind of finished the course. She got her degree, and that's how she bounced back to where she was. And right now she's working with Axis Bank, and she is almost eligible to become an AVP. So that's what I would say. Just network and do some short learning to get back on track.
So the insights that we have from Nishita out here is networking is very much critical to you bouncing back or starting something new. That is one. And second thing, you need to upskill yourself. Like just in the case of Preksha that we've learned, she's upskilled herself. In the case of Aditi, where she is an accidental entrepreneur, started from working with a venture fund to embracing entrepreneurship. So it's the new challenges that come your way and you take them up and gear up yourself with the required skill sets that is needed. A question for you, Aditi, out here. Just wanted to understand, how are the first few initial months of the entrepreneurship? What sort of emotional trauma that an entrepreneur faces in the initial months, and how can the attendees go about managing that particular trauma out there?
Trauma exists through the entire journey, by the way. the trauma just changes in nature, but it kind of exists. Okay, so, I think when you are responsible for everything in your company, right? I mean, what do you really do, right? Because when you are in a job, you're doing something very specific and you are responsible for something very specific, right? Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, you're responsible for anything that can go wrong at the on ground, anything that goes wrong with your team, anything that goes wrong with your investor, anything and everything. Okay. And so that is something which is, when you start, I mean, you think that, okay, I'm a finance professional, right? So how am I going to know about marketing? What do I know about digital marketing? What do I know about product development and tech? How will I figure out HR? Because, I mean, HR was the one subject which I didn't even bother taking when I was doing MBA. Okay. So how do you really figure this out? And I remember at that time that one course that we had on motivational theories and all, and I was like, ये सब क्या होता है? ये सब, nonsense है एकदम, कभी काम में नहीं आएगा. And you really realize that यही सब काम में आ रहा है. Actually, आपका सारा technical knowledge जो है ना, it goes out of the window, and you are really grappling and figuring out, how you're going to manage the entire thing. So I think when you become an entrepreneur, the first few months is really about figuring out how you're going to drive your organization, how you're going to run it, who's going to run those critical positions, how are you going to make sure that you know what's happening on ground. How are you going to make sure that people who are running, things for you are truthful and will come up with the right stuff, and how, you're not going to, I mean, the most interesting thing I remember in 2014 was, ma'am, मुझे hire कर लो, मुझे SEO आता है. And, I was like, ये SEO तो एक बिल्कुल ही भयानक सी चीज है. It is, something which is completely, I mean, it's like a mantra that आप SEO कर लो तो, your business is going to do well. So, the whole idea is that you have a certain skill set, right? But as a CEO, you're going to be able to, you have to be the jack of all trades, right? And you need to know the basics of everything. So the first few months for me also, and by the way, I had a great coach. One of the ladies who was there in the fund which invested in my company figured that I needed a coach in those first few months, and I did go to that coach, and she really helped me think through how I'm going to run the company, not at this stage, but also as it scales. Because you need to understand that, when you're scaling, that is by far the toughest journey that an entrepreneur can go through. And that is when, your entire thing that you've put to the test, everything is basically out there for people to be judgmental on and to figure out, because here you have now, if you have 5 properties, how many, people will say good things, people will say bad things, it's okay. But if you have 200 properties, imagine the quantum of feedback that is coming back to you on a daily basis, right? So you really have to put everything to the test, and that is where, that is a very difficult part of your entrepreneurial journey. So initially, in the initial few months, you have to figure out how you're going to run it. And interestingly, I don't think a lot of people know this, but there is something that we call as MIS, the Management Information Systems, and that is, that is basically how people run companies. And I remember at one time I had told my coach that, look, I think only Jack Welch is going to run this company because it's got so many different verticals, and I don't come from hospitality. So when somebody asks me, that, okay, khana kaise standardize hoga, I'm like, I have no clue, yaar. Mujhe nahi pata kaise hoga standardized, right? So yeah, in the first few months, really you have to conceptualize how you're going to run it. MIS is one big key. Doesn't happen so fast because in the beginning, MIS is so terrible. It's absolutely terrible. लोगों को पता नहीं क्या data देना है, आपको पता नहीं क्या data collect करना है, आपको पता नहीं कौन से basis पे आप information लेने वाले हो. But that is really how, once you start standardizing your MIS and it starts flowing, that's when you can really scale, and that's when the journey becomes a little easier, and then you are able to focus on things which are a little more strategic and not the daily operational stuff. Which, by the way, if anybody tells you, it's not true. Huh? Every CEO has to do the operational stuff as well. So it's not, they don't only look at the strategic stuff, but yeah, if as the MIS becomes more standardized and the information flow becomes more, it comes on a daily basis, there are a whole lot of things that you don't need to ask your team, and so you can focus on the more important areas.
That was amazing from you, Aditi, sharing your insights as to how the entire entrepreneurial journey has been emotionally draining, and how having a coach or a mentor can do wonders for any of the businesses out here. The next question is for you, Preksha. Preksha would just like to understand as to how exactly these days you see young students, young guns coming right out of the college and wanting to start something of their own, wanting to embrace entrepreneurship. So some sort of working guidelines, some tips and tricks for these guys to, really make the most of this opportunity and sell. Preksha, you are on mute right now.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So I just answered Amin on the similar lines actually in the comments. So a lot of so they are lucky ones who figured out very early in their journey that they want to be entrepreneurship at very early stage of their career, and there are some who want to be entrepreneurs but they are not sure which direction to take. So in both the cases, I think the best thing to actually start with is to do a little internship somewhere which is closer to your idea. And most of the time you will realize that your bosses or the head of the companies are more supportive of the idea that you want to also create, and maybe will help you frame those things more properly. But then let's say you don't have any of those things. So as I have written in the comment, if some of you can have read it yet, so you start with a basic skeleton of the idea that you want to create, that you think is going to be a hit idea. Then you look for all the companies which are out there doing something similar. Let's say that what I do, what Alpha AI does, there are numerous BI companies out there like Tableau, Power BI, Microsoft. Then there are companies which have created their own MIS and BI systems as well. So now what can I create that these companies lack? First of all, I'll need to realize the problem which exists in their industry because of something that they do not have desired effect, or their work style is not easy, not available to everyone, not efficient. So how do I handle these three problems? When we started to realize that these are some problems which recuse people from actually adopting BI tools, because of technology roadblock which most people have. So how do I remove that particular problem? And that's where the conversational AI came into picture. So you figure out that what is the standing problem, which are the other players who are solving the same problem, and what is unique in how you are trying to solve that problem, and you list that down and then try to match that. Why have they not tried these things? Because sometimes a feature is just not a good feature, and that's why probably someone has not tried it. So you will have an early answer to your question whether you should do it this way or not, right? Like my previous company, when I'm saying that I can give you a fully serviced dashboard, they have teams for it. They don't do it because it doesn't help them. They want a fully serviced dashboard, then they will have either internal team or an external team, which I work with. So it was a bad idea to have a company which is giving a full service platform for them, because that makes it a services company and not the product that we wanted it to be. So you need to figure out that why someone has not used those unique propositions that you are bringing on table. And once you find that, okay, fine, they do not have the technical expertise, they do not have the understanding, they do not have the right market for it, maybe that's when you start making your business plan, putting it together, and then figure out that who is the person who's going to buy it. Because once you make it, you will need some people to buy it. Before you have actually made it, you need to figure out that the moment it's out of the door, who's going to buy it. Because it will take your time. It will take some amount of money. It will take you some convincing to do to your parents, to your peers, to your teams who are going to actually help you do it, right? You'll be lucky if you have a passionate group of students who come together and they build something. I remember there was one project that I saw where students created a product, a physical product which used to absorb the moisture from the atmosphere and stored water. Very amazing product. All these guys, they have been going to different competition and winning some money, and that's how they were paying the people who for the products for the raw materials that they were buying. Brilliant idea. We have done that thing as well. For initial part of our RealBox startup, we used to churn up some unique ideas, go to different competitions and get some money out of that. So two things here, that one, if you are being able to showcase your ideas at few platforms, get some money from there, very good for you. If you can find people who will buy it once you build it, that is the time when you should start building it actually. because once you have built it, you will be continuously get their feedback as well. And once you have built it, you know that who's going to buy it. Even if it doesn't work very nicely, they will understand and they will support you. So I think these are the basic guidelines you can actually look onto.
So some guidelines from Preksha for our young entrepreneurs is to create some sort of framework for yourself before you begin and prepare an MVP, see how much traction do you guys get, and based on the traction, you can go ahead building the full-fledged product. Now my questions to all three of you, one last questions on this end. I would request each one of you to share some tips and tricks for someone who's starting a new business. I'd like to go ahead with you, Nishita, first.
So, like I told you, I've worked with so many people who have been starting up, starting the venture. This is one advice that I give to everyone, and it's something that I also worked on my own business. It's called a game changer strategy. I don't think there is this term that has been used. It's just something that I use it because I feel that as a startup, we don't have a lot of budgets to kind of go in marketing. We don't have a lot of funding to put in marketing. And, we are actually quite stingy to, really put money there because we don't know if it's going to work or not going to work. So this is a game changer strategy that I figured out, and it's actually from a case study that I had heard about Amul as a brand. So I'm just going to quickly tell you what that was. So Amul had this simple idea 40 years back, when they wanted to get into marketing and advertising and they wanted to have a bigger reach. What Amul did was they went to an ad agency and they said that we don't have money, we don't have budgets. And I'm sure this is something every startup would relate to. Every agency will relate to that. That's what people come and tell them, that there are no budgets for marketing. But they said that we have a clear objective, which is we want to be on the top of the mind of our customers, which means the minute people talk about butter, people should just talk about Amul. So we have one clear objective out of the campaign that we want you to run. And also remember that we don't have budgets. So the campaign that ad agency came up with, and I think it's 40 years, Amul has been still using it, is they said that, okay, the most easiest and budgeted way of promoting you is through hoardings. So we'll do hoardings. They created that mascot, Utterly Butterly Delicious, that little girl with short hair and fringe. And they still continue her. And the whole idea was she's a really cool, cute, bubbly little girl. And she's going to come out and give her comments on current affairs. And she's going to talk about, what she thinks about what's going on. And for the last 40 years, this is exactly what Amul does. That's their game changer strategy. So my thing here is, guys, if you're on a tight budget, do just one thing and do it consistently, constantly, so that at some point you're known, your brand gets that visibility, it gets that awareness. Similarly, if I take my business, my struggle was obviously as a business coach, people need to hear me, they need to listen to what I have to say, they need to, see how knowledgeable I am, how educated I am. So they had to know me, they had to like me, they had to trust me. So I had to build credibility. And the only solution I could think of was if people could hear me. But like I felt that in India, if you hear someone for free, you don't want to pay them for anything else. So that was also a block that I had. So then I said that what else can I do that can be my game changer strategy? So currently my game changer strategy in business is very simple, guys. I do a lot of YouTube videos on business coaching, business tips, so what happens is when I put out a little 5-minute video on YouTube on a particular topic, and I do these 10, 20, 30 videos, every week, every month, people here start listening to me and they start trusting me, and the credibility is built on. The initial 5-10 videos that I did, I realized that I was actually, it was getting easier for me to make conversions. But currently, what is happening is if I put one video out, I'm getting a lot of people straight signing up for my work that I do. So my idea is just have this one game changer strategy. Don't do everything. Like, don't run out of what others are doing. If others are great on Instagram or on Facebook or on, any other broadcast media or whatever, don't follow the trend. You create your own trend. You create your own unique game changer strategy. That one thing that you can do consistently. And obviously try to make it zero cost as well. So for us, that's my game changer strategy.
So, some good learning for the attendees that we have out here to have their own game-changing strategy. Not one shoe fits all, not one size fits all. You need to see what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and accordingly, you can stick to that particular strategy and go ahead. Next, Aditi, I would like to know from you some sort of hacks or business tricks that the businesses out here can take up for their early traction.
Okay. So I'm kind of a sucker for B-School tools. Okay. And I'd say that even if you're not from a B-School, and even if you don't know how to make a business plan, it is really something that you should spend a lot of time on. Because what it really does for you is to map out how you see your own business, right? You need to say, you'll have a team, you'll have so many people in your ecosystem, you'll have stakeholders, and everybody has to buy into your vision, right? So that can only happen if you yourself are very clear on what is the business that you want to create, what is the problem that you are targeting, has someone done it before, are you mimicking someone, what are the local strategies that you are employing because you're not in that ecosystem, you're in India, and so on and so forth. So I think for me, a well thought through business plan, which by the way is a prerequisite before going to anybody. These days, even if you go to friends and family for funding, they'll say PPT bhej do yaar. So I think that is something that you really do invest your time in it. It starts all the way from an idea. What is your idea about? How do you validate your idea? What are people talking to you about? Who has done it? What you're doing differently and what you're doing better? And of course, at the end of it, it will go through how you see the business growing yourself. So in the first year, milestones for yourself that, look, this is what I want to achieve. Next year, this is what I want to achieve. And, all business plans are based on assumptions. So you assume that everything is fine and no COVID sort of situation will ever occur again in life. So go in for a utopian assumption, but at the same time, still, even with that, you need to think through how your business is really going to grow. The second thing a business plan does for you is that it also helps you to estimate the resources that you need. Because you'll actually have to think about, kitni badi team chahiye. Can I do the same thing with 5 people? I don't want to do it with 40 people. I want to keep my business small, niche. I want to do it with a small team. So you'll have to think through, you'll have to actually put down what positions you're going to hire for, how much you're going to pay them. And it makes you think details of things that you otherwise will not think. You'll say that, acha, hum shuru karte hain, fir dekhenge. Right? So I think for me, it's an important thing. And, I'm now thinking of my next venture, and even there, all I'm doing is spending all my time in research and speaking to people. And again, Nishika said something wonderful. We should just network, and women think of networking very differently than men think of networking. So for us, networking is just talk to people or talk to somebody who can introduce you to somebody, and just talk to them about your idea, get feedback from them. You don't need expensive market research firms. You don't need surveys. You don't need to create all those things. You don't need to be a statistician to figure out what biases are going to be there. You don't need all this. You really don't. You start simple, keep it simple, but you really need to think through in details what you're going to do and what are your plans for your own business.
So attendees who are looking forward to start something of their own or have started something and been stuck somewhere, a good advice is to download some sort of image. You can just Google it up, writing a business model canvas or a lean business model canvas. You'll get a lot of copies out there. You can go ahead, you can just fill that entire model and, boom, you are somewhere and you have a bit of clarity as to what your business is all about and how you can shape it further. Some words of wisdom from you, Preksha, as well.
Sure. I've been here long enough to collect some for myself. So, guys, first I'll just renunciate what Nishta said. Sorry, Nishita said. Is my voice echoing?
No, it's
Okay.
completely fine. You
Okay, yeah.
can go ahead.
So I'll just reinforce that. Like, you need, when you're marketing, and as founder, you have to market. Like, it starts with you. You have to decide how you are going to talk about your product, what you are doing, because the emotion that you can convey is what's going to give any ad agency the confidence to build it the way you like it to be built. Okay. So second thing is like build a lot of videos. Like you cannot keep conveying it to everyone and telling everyone what you do all the time, right? So you like LinkedIn is an amazing platform. You go see some of my videos. I've been doing this for a long time, trying to figure out how to express myself to people, express what we are doing, and do it in a more understandable fashion. So while you will build those videos, and please use TikTok. I have not used it yet, but I think it has great reach. And for someone just starting now, people who are trying to understand how to give consumer goods out, or like something that a B2C product, it's an amazing platform. Please go do few videos, show how you're doing things, show what effect it's having on people. It's going to be amazing for you. So while you do this, also figure out your story, because no matter how good your product is, if you can't explain it well, it will never reach out to people. People will never be able to feel connected to it, how people feel connected to Amul butter today, like Nishita said. So one thing about emphasizing on what Aditi also said, that talk to people. Talk to people, tell them what you are doing, show them what you are doing. Don't be afraid that someone will take your idea. किसी के पास इतना टाइम नहीं है यार, किसी ने करना होता वो कर रहे होते, they are not going to say कि अच्छा I am going to do what you are doing only, that is the only thing in the world. Don't worry about that. When someone sees that how passionate the other person doing something they want to do, even if I want to do that, I won't do it, because I know like I cannot have that kind of passion. Now one very important thing, marketing starts at home. Explain it to your spouse, your parents, what you're doing, because you are going to have a lot of ups and downs, and they'll be mostly downs, not up actually. And you need them standing by your side, keeping calm and thinking that fine, they will, I know my kid, I know my spouse, they will get through this. And if I support them, they probably will do better. Instead of them feeling like, oh, I don't know how he's going to survive on his own, we need to go and interrupt and say something that, stop him. So start that confidence building at home, where your folks, your friends understand what you do, you are totally passionate about, and you have done your research, and that's why you have picked it, because you have genuinely realized that this is something that needs your attention. And just one more thing, okay? Find your mentors, find some industry experts who are happy to give you advice. And I know a lot of them will not have time for you. They will say, okay, we'll talk some other time, so you also have to be very specific with your questions, because trust me, most of the times, if you go to them with specific questions, they will answer to you. And if you have done that like couple of times, eventually they will feel more connected to you and answer you every time. So find those mentors for you. That's from me.
Great, Preksha. So some learning from Preksha out here is make the most out of the available social media platforms that you have within your reach. Talking and networking with the people will help you a lot. And most importantly, try to sell your product, your idea to your friends and family first. Long before, when I was doing my MBA, one of the professor told me the first fools to invest into your business would be your friends and family. So make sure these guys trust you so that you can reach further. That trust matters a lot. And
But
as
I'll add one more thing. I
sure,
thought there
sure.
was a question by someone. Someone asked a question like, I am not from IT background. How do I find someone how do I hire someone for IT, right? There was a question like that. So just to add on that part, your mentors will help you do that. If you are not technologically savvy, find friend or someone who understands your idea. They will help you refine the approach to find a resume like that for you.
Now, I hope the attendee who wanted the answer has got it in the right manner. Now, to continue the Devex ritual we have across our webinars and events, I would request each of the panel member to ask a question to a fellow panelist, and then we'll call it a wrap. First of all, to start with, Nishita, kindly go ahead with a question to any of the fellow panelists out.
So I have a question for Aditi, and I just wanted to ask her that, the kind of industry that she's built, the We Resorts. So so obviously lockdown has really brought everything into a standstill. But what is the new way, or what do you think that what is going to be a comeback? What are you going to do next with this brand? Because I think the lockdown is going to be on and it's going to be a little longer. I feel like people to step out and actually go out for leisure. So what's going to be your comeback on that?
So we have very interesting data and stats coming our way. We're actually planning to reopen as far late as October. But if you look at the China market, you're seeing the domestic leisure market at a 90% occupancy. Just to let you know, the occupancies in the leisure market don't cross 60%. Okay, 60 is the greatest. We make a lot of money at 60%. Let's put it that way, right? So I mean, that's heartening news. And the way our resorts are structured, they are actually meant to be around the drivable distances from the metro, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to sit in your car and you're going to reach our resort. Now, obviously, the burden is on us to prove to you that we've done a whole lot of work in terms of hygiene. We have new standards of safety. And if there was any COVID breakout or anything near a COVID breakout, we'll have the equipment to deal with it. So our SOPs, which are the standard operating procedures, have undergone a complete change, and that's what we're working on. Where hospitality is a high touch industry, right? Because I can say that मैं आपको virtually यहाँ से दिखा देती हूँ कि pine trees कितने अच्छे लग रहे हैं शिमला में, but at the end of the day you want to go there, right? But we still have a lot of processes which can be automated, which can be minimal touch. For example, the whole process from that is around the luggage. So how you get somebody's luggage to the room, right? That whole process is something that we're trying to automate. Audits where people used to actually go to the property to see what's happening. That entire process is being automated, and you are going to see tech in this industry like you've never seen it before. It's going to be amazing, amazing technology. I started using some of it myself. It's very interesting. Where earlier what we used to do is somebody used to escort you to around the property to showcase. Now everything is going to be virtual walkthroughs. Not to say that you are not going to do it yourself, because you're at the property, so you will do it yourself. We are actually contemplating, that if the guy behind the front office desk is going to be wearing a visor, it should not put anybody off, and you should not feel scared, right? So things like that. So it's completely changing. The whole thing is changing, and we hopefully will start our marketing somewhere around somewhere around August, September, so that by October people feel confident. Also, I think once the vaccination, so there are actually two things. One, with the death rates coming down, people are more comfortable going out. You suddenly see a lot of activity. At least in Delhi, there's a lot of activity these days, and you know that Bombay, Delhi are the biggest hotspots in our country at the present time, right? But people are moving out. People are moving out with new processes, and they're comfortable using masks. They're comfortable using sanitizers. So we're trying to figure out that if you come into our resort, that right at the entrance gate, instead of usually people are holding a tray which has welcome drinks. So instead of that, if we're going to have towels and sanitization. Interesting ways, not the typical sanitizer, plastic sanitizer aapko nahi milega, but interesting ways on how to sanitize yourself before you enter the resort. That's something I think people will be comfortable with. So just like you saw after this whole terrorist thing, I mean, now we're all comfortable walking through those, those electronic, those safety things, right? When we enter a hotel. So I think those things are going to completely change. You'll suddenly see hotels doing something completely new. And ours are not typically those small, constricted hotels where you feel like you're in a matchbox sort of situation. They're actually very spread out and they're big. So I can actually think about giving one cottage to one family and they'll be comfortable. And the other cottage is far enough that social distancing norms can be maintained. Even at the lobby, there will be circles now, so that there are social distancing.
Aditi, sorry to Sorry to interrupt you. We've already
Yeah, sorry.
stretched our hour to an hour and a half. A quick question for the fellow panelists out here.
My question?
Yes, your question from to Aditi, to Nishita or Preksha. Please go ahead.
Okay. To Nishita again, because more than I have a whole lot of questions about women entrepreneurs and especially budding women entrepreneurs. So I wanted to know from you that what are the top concerns that you find, when women come to you that they want to start a business, what are their top concerns?
So the biggest concern that I think that I with every woman is lack of confidence. Like the first session, I think that I work with women. In fact, throughout all the sessions when I work with them, I'm actually trying to build confidence apart from what I'm actually trying to do in their business. Because at every stage they lose confidence. So that's one concern, really big concern. And I think that's just the fear of the unknown.
I have some sound. Yeah.
The second concern is women are just comfortable with selling.
We are encountering some sort of
I think
audio
we have
issue
some
from your end.
some audio issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So just going to share two concerns. One is definitely lack of confidence. The other is selling. So women are very averse to selling. We'll create the product, we'll make it, we'll make sure the product is great quality, handmade, handcrafted, all of that. But just don't keep us away from selling, the whole bit of selling it, marketing it. So these are the two major concerns that I feel women have.
Preksha, one question from you to either of the fellow panelists that you would like to either learn, like to know, or get some sort of hands-on experience or knowledge.
Yeah, actually, I have one question for each of you, if that's allowed for us.
Super. Go ahead.
So, Aditi, I have one question that, like, right now the situation is that I am not sure if you're operational or not at different properties, but the staff, the team must also be very concerned about how they are going to handle the situation, right? And like, what precautions do you think they will get used to moving on, because there'll be a lot of touch, right? I've seen people quitting in hospitality very recently because like half of my friend base is from hospitality industry. So how is it affecting your workforce right now?
Mute. Aditi is on mute.
Is she here? I'm not sure.
Sorry,
Aditi, can you? Yeah.
Yeah. So we have two types of employees. One at the corporate level. Those guys are completely geared towards working on the new technology that we need to put in place, new processes, what is the equipment that we need to buy, all those sort of things. What are the processes we can automate before we open, all that. So we are honestly very gainfully employed. We have a lot of work. But the guys at the resorts, obviously, because all the resorts are closed. None of them are operational because, all our properties are in offbeat places. They're not in the cities. So the issue was that nobody will be able to reach them because you have people coming from the main metros, right? And they would have to cross state borders usually. So people won't be able to reach. And secondly, you don't even want them because the places where we are at, they are very environmentally sensitive. So the teams there have a basic staff. They are going on leave on rotation. Thankfully, I had just told you we were able to raise some money just before. So in terms of the salaries and all, we're not so impacted at the present time. I mean, we went back to our investors. We asked them. There was no point in their taking any pay cuts because, it's not even, it's a very small in terms of the salary quantum. So we've just taken a pay cut at the leadership level. But we are okay because we know that we're coming back to business, because we know that our investors are supporting us, and we know that no matter what the timeline, they are okay and they are deep pocketed enough to have a broader time horizon. So we are okay, but I know that the whole industry isn't.
Thanks. Nishita, I have one question for you, because I'm sure you must be already planning on these kind of situations, right? When people set up their business, they plan for when things are not right, not like this bad, but when things are not right, how they are going to manage the staff. which is with most of the startups, because they either run out of the money or they do not get that kind of work to keep the staff interested, and they start to look out for something else. And there are a lot of cuts happening at this point. So Nishita, what is your suggestion at this point?
So, honestly, the kind of people that I'm working with, thankfully, they are not going cutting staffs right now. Because a lot of people have been talking to me, calling me, what are we supposed to do? How do we work on this? So my suggestion to them has always been that, guys, it's your responsibility to take care of your staff. So ideally, cutting them out is not a great idea. And only more or less the kind of people I work with don't have more than 20 to 30 people in their team. So what I've actually suggested them is to kind of realign, restructure, reorganize. It's like, when you're on a holiday, when you're home, the first thing we do is start cleaning the home, right? Because you don't get time otherwise to do that. So for the last 40 days, I've actually requested all of my clients to actually get their databases in place, get their clients listing done right, get an email set up, done for the clientele. So a lot of internal work that was not happening, I've actually got all my clients to kind of, work on that. And I've given them a task list to work on and get the entire team to, fully get onto it. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll just quickly add, maybe I didn't answer you properly. If you are dealing with, if you are dealing with staff issues, there are only two things I want to tell you. One, every business changes, they pivot, the capability requirement is different. And once with every year, you're rejigging your entire plan. So that is what happens in a startup, and that is the nature of a startup, right? Now, the only thing that I would say legally from the point of view of letting go of your staff is that just adhere to the appointment letters that you have given to them. If you have given them a notice period, just pay them for it and let them go. But if you need to let them go, you need to let them go. At the end of the day, businesses have to survive, right? So that's...
So luckily, actually, we have been able to, well, because we're an IT company, so it's good for us. But most of the companies are suffering with that kind of like customer payments are not coming in.
Rightly so. There isn't any judgment on this.
Great, thank you so much, lovely women out there. Just to sum the entire webinar that we had, I would just quickly like to go ahead with all the learnings that the attendees can take up from the entire session. You can start small with just yourself, and no one requires deep pockets to start something on their own. Learning is a continual process, and you need to keep going until you settle or you find something that you want to settle with. Entrepreneurship requires you to take all the risk, which starts with foregoing your paycheck, rightly mentioned by Aditi. The journey of entrepreneurship is emotionally draining, and having a coach or mentor helps a lot in moving forward. As rightly mentioned by Preksha, creating a skeleton or a framework of what you want to build, and just try to collate all the things one by one, and networking is the key to go ahead and connect with people, make them understand what you want to build and why are you doing so. Not one size fits all, so try and figure out what works for you and what doesn't, and stick to the idea to gain early traction. Having a story that people will be able to connect with is very much important, and make the use of the most available social media platforms to share what your business is all about. Now, to quickly wrap up, Devex is extremely pumped up to organize such webinars for our community members and provide them more useful information to grow in a collaborative approach. On behalf of Devex, I would like to thank all our support partners and participants for attending the webinar, and most of all, our extreme panel members here for providing their insights and guidance. We'll share with all the attendees an email requesting their feedback to understand their existing needs and come up with the required webinars and meetup. So till we arrange the next webinar for you, see you all. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, panelists. I mean, it was wonderful to have you guys out here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.